In our headlines on this Monday, September 15th, here in South Korea. U.S. President Donald Trump is seeking to put to rest concerns about foreign investment into the American market following the recent detention and departure of hundreds of South Korean workers from Georgia. Meanwhile, the administration's decision to draw back a controversial capital gains tax hike proposal for stock investments drove the local bourse to a fresh high on this Monday. And plans are in the works to supply the market with 15 key grocery items in time for the Chuseok holiday in early October and to spend 50 billion Korean won on discounts to ease the burden on purse strings. U.S. President Donald Trump is seeking to restore confidence among foreign investors following the recent detention and consequent departure of hundreds of South Korean engineers and technicians from the Hyundai plant in Georgia. Lee Seung-jae has our top story.
U.S. President Donald Trump is seeking to reassure foreign investors after the mass detention of South Korean workers in Georgia raised fresh concerns about America's credibility as a reliable business partner. In a social media post Sunday, Trump said he does not want to frighten off or disincentivize foreign investment. He stressed that companies building advanced products like semiconductors, ships, and batteries are welcome in the U.S., and that he wants them to bring skilled workers to train Americans. Trump added that U.S. workers would eventually do even better than their counterparts abroad. The comments come just days after 316 South Korean workers were detained during an immigration raid at an electric vehicle battery plant construction site in Bryan County, Georgia. The plant is a joint venture between Hyundai Motor Group and LG Energy Solution. The workers were detained for a week before returning home on Friday. The incident sparked anger in South Korea, prompting diplomatic intervention. On Sunday, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau met with Seoul's first Vice Foreign Minister Park Yoon-ju in Seoul. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, Landau expressed deep regrets over the detention and vowed to prevent similar cases in the future. He conveyed that President Trump is personally following the issue and promised that the detained workers will not face disadvantages if they seek to re-enter the U.S. Landau also proposed working-level talks on visa procedures to better support South Korean firms investing in America. In response, Vice Minister Park raised concerns about the hardships endured by the detained workers and noted the strong sense of shock felt by the South Korean public. Both sides agreed that the incident should be used as an opportunity to strengthen bilateral ties and improve institutional safeguards for workers tied to major investment projects. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And Seoul and Washington are engaged in follow-up negotiations to finalize the trade framework reached in late July, but talks are proving to be tough. Our Pyun Ye-young explains.
Trade talks between South Korea and the U.S. are set to continue as Trade Minister Yeo Han-gu leaves for the U.S. on Monday to meet with the United States Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. Industry Minister Kim Jong-un returned home the previous day after follow-up discussions with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick on the trade agreement reached in July. Under that deal, the U.S. had agreed to cut reciprocal tariffs from 25% to 15% in exchange for Seoul pledging investment worth $350 billion. But follow-up talks have proven difficult. U.S. officials are demanding that Korea increase the share of direct investment, allow Washington to select where the funds are invested, and concede 90% of the profits to the United States. For Seoul, such terms are seen as unfair. The presidential office has reiterated that no hasty decision will be made at the expense of the nation's interest.
The president has previously described Korea's stance as defensive. We are conducting negotiations with the aim of protecting national interests to the fullest.
The presidential office also explained that the negotiations are not aimed at a single fixed goal, but involve both sides presenting new conditions in search of balance, making the talks highly variable. Japan, a key rival in automobiles, struck a deal with Washington in early September, adding pressure on Seoul. Tokyo agreed to invest $550 billion under terms set by the U.S., including project selection and a 90% profit share. In return, tariffs on Japanese cars fall to 15% from September 16th, putting Korean exporters at a disadvantage. With the talks at a standstill, attention now turns to President Lee Jae-myung's upcoming trip to the UN General Assembly in New York later this month, which could provide another opportunity for another summit with President Trump. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
Hyundai Engineering and Construction has won a deal worth over $3.1 billion to build a seawater treatment plant in Iraq. The project is reportedly part of the Iraqi government-led Common Seawater Supply Project, an initiative aimed at injecting seawater into oil reservoirs to boost crude oil output in Iraq's southern oil fields. The construction is expected to be completed within 49 months. This new deal marks Hyundai E&C's largest project in Iraq since the company's completion of a $6 billion oil refinery in Karbala back in the year 2023. The government's decision to draw back a controversial capital gains tax hike proposal for stock investments drove the local bourse to yet another fresh high on this Monday. Her Park Jun-an covers this latest rally and more.
The decision by the government to maintain the major shareholder threshold for capital gains tax at 5 billion Korean won, or around $3.6 million, has fueled the KOSPI rally. Adding momentum to its record-breaking streak for a fourth straight session, the KOSPI closed above the 3,400 mark on Monday for the first time in its history. The market had temporarily stalled since July after news that proposed tax reform would slash the capital gains tax threshold for major shareholders to 1/5 of its current level. But stocks started to bounce back after President Lee Jae-myung suggested last Thursday that the measure might be revised.
야당도 요구하고 또 여당도 또 그냥 놔두면 좋겠다는 의견이고 저한테 메시지도 막 많이 오고 그런 걸 봐서는 굳이 50억을 10억으로 내리자 반드시 그렇게 해야 되겠다 그렇게 생각하지는 않습니다.
After President Lee publicly addressed the possibility of leaving the threshold unchanged, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Economy and Finance Koo Yoon-chul confirmed the government's decision to maintain the current level.
There was considerable deliberation regarding the major shareholder threshold for the capital gains tax on stock transfers. Officials weighed the need for fair taxation against the goal of supporting and energizing the capital market. After considering both public opinion and the party's position, the government decided to keep the threshold at 5 billion won.
The professor of economics said the decision to leave the tax threshold unchanged brought stability to the stock market.
From the perspective of stock investors, maintaining the 5 billion won threshold means holdings below this level remain unaffected, helping to stabilize stock prices. By keeping the threshold, the administration has also encouraged investors who previously considered selling to hold on to their positions, which positively impacts the stock market.
Now, attention is focused on stabilizing foreign exchange rates and the upcoming U.S. Federal Reserve interest rate decision, as well as the U.S. Fed's future guidance that could impact global stock markets. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
Efforts are underway to stabilize grocery prices in time for the Chuseok holiday, which falls on Monday, October 6th this year. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young has details.
Ahead of the Korean version of the Thanksgiving holiday Chuseok, the government and the ruling party are rolling up their sleeves with ways to help ease grocery costs. The plan was announced on Monday at a meeting between the administration and the Democratic Party.
Rising prices during the holiday season shouldn't be taken for granted. We hope the government's plan to supply record amounts of vegetables, meat, and other essentials goes smoothly. The party's price task force will track price drivers from production and work on fundamental solutions on the ground.
As part of the efforts, the government is increasing the supply of key grocery items for Chuseok, including apples, pears, and chestnuts, to a record 172,000 tons.
We will boost the supply of 15 key grocery items and spend a record 50 billion Korean won on discounts to help lower people's grocery bills.
After the meeting, the DP said that the government will also provide an additional 25,000 tons of rice to stabilize prices, while vulnerable groups will be eligible for a 20% discount. To boost domestic consumption, the government will issue 150,000 accommodation coupons for use in special disaster zones that have been heavily hit by natural disasters. Highway tolls will be waived for 4 days starting October 4th, and KTX and SRT train tickets for travelers from the provinces to the capital area during the Chuseok holiday will be discounted by up to 40%. The government will also spend a record 43.2 trillion won, or about $31 billion, to provide greater support for small business owners as well as small and mid-sized companies. Meanwhile, the DP called for thorough preparations to avoid confusion over the government's second round of livelihood recovery consumption coupons, which will begin accepting applications next Monday, with the government pledging to do its best for a smooth rollout. 신하영, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, applications start today for the government's nationwide payback program that reimburses consumers for part of their credit card spending. In a bid to boost spending and support small businesses, the 3-month program offers monthly refunds of up to 100,000 won, or roughly $74, for adults whose card spending has surpassed their monthly average spending in 2024. All residents of age who used a credit or debit card last year are eligible to apply, including foreign residents. Applications will remain open until November 30th, while payouts begin October 15th. Refunds will be issued in the form of digital gift certificates valid for 5 years and are capped at 300,000 won over 3 months. South Korea's ICT exports jumped over 11% on-year last month, driven by greater demand for AI-related chips. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young covers the latest findings.
South Korea's ICT exports last month achieved record-breaking August figures, driven by record-high chip sales despite U.S. tariffs. According to data released by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Sunday, ICT exports in August totaled over $22.8 billion, up 11.1% year-on-year. Semiconductor exports, the largest export engine, surpassed $15 billion, marking a 27% increase. The record-breaking performance was driven by the rising contract prices of memory chips and robust demand for high-performance memory products such as HBM and DDR5, fueled by the expansion of AI servers and data centers.
Currently, the impact of U.S. tariff policies isn't prominently affecting semiconductors, so we need to consider that aspect separately. AI semiconductors come in various types, and Korea's HBM is integrated into those AI systems. Given HBM's exceptionally high unit price, it's significantly driving our current export boost, and we expect this upward trend to continue.
In contrast, display exports saw a decline due to sluggish demand in front-end industries like TVs, monitors, and mobile devices. Mobile phone exports also experienced an overall decrease as the slowdown in component exports outweighed the strong performance of new finished product exports. Exports of computers and peripherals also fell, largely influenced by the sharp increase in SSD exports the year before, creating a high base effect. Among major markets to see an increase were Vietnam, up 18%, and the European Union with a rise of 8.2%, while Taiwan saw a particularly strong surge of over 65%. Japan and China also saw increased exports. Exports to the U.S., however, were down by 9.9%. Meanwhile, ICT imports totaled over $12.5 billion, resulting in a positive ICT trade balance. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung has vowed to do away with the burdensome bureaucracy against new businesses. Do take a listen.
거미줄처럼 규제들이 얽혀 있는데 이런 거미줄 규제를 좀 과감하게 확 걷어내자라는 게 우리 이번 정부의 목표입니다. 또 필요하다면 법제화를 포함해서 강력한 추진력을 가지고 좀 진행을 해볼 생각입니다.
Speaking at a strategy meeting for regulatory reform, the first of its kind under the new government on this Monday, the president also addressed ways to streamline regulations in AI, self-driving vehicles and robots. Also on the table today was the broader task of facilitating corporate growth. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun is scheduled to sit down with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in Beijing this week. According to the foreign ministry here, Cho will depart for a two-day trip this coming Wednesday to mark the first top diplomats meeting between Seoul and Beijing under the Lee Jae-myung administration. On the agenda are prospects of Chinese President Xi Jinping's presence at the APEC leaders meeting in Gyeongju and ways to advance the two countries' strategic partnership. President Lee Jae-myung has appointed attorney Cha Ji-hoon as South Korea's ambassador to the United Nations. Cha previously served as legal counsel to Seongnam City and was part of Lee's defense team in a 2020 election-related lawsuit that ended in an acquittal. Unlike other ambassadorships, the UN post does not require host country approval, so Cha is expected to take up his post in New York soon. The Lee Jae-myung administration's first National Assembly interpellation kicked off today. The four-day session sees lawmakers question government officials on a wide range of issues, starting with politics on this Monday. Foreign affairs will be addressed on Tuesday, the economy on Wednesday, and culture as well as education on Thursday. The ruling Democratic Party is expected to focus on its legislative agenda, emphasizing the people's livelihoods and the need for reform, while the main opposition People Power Party has declared its intention to use the Q&A session to grill officials on the new government's policies. Now, advances in artificial intelligence are aggravating the digital divide, and while plans are in the works to address this concern, pundits say much more needs to be done. Our Eun-jin files this report.
As technology continues to advance by the day, difficulties inevitably grow for the elderly as they become digitally marginalized. The rural town of Gwaninmyeon in Pocheon City has the highest proportion of elderly residents in Gyeonggi-do Province. Accordingly, Pocheon City has been running an AI community center for seniors since December 2024. The program helps the elderly use common digital devices like kiosks and card readers.
I didn't know how to use it, so I used to just watch from afar and walk away. But now I want to step forward and try things myself, like making payments on my own. I've gained the confidence that it's not just for young people, and that feels great.
For that reason, some local governments are showing interest in providing digital education for vulnerable groups, but efforts remain far from sufficient. As much as AI technologies are developing and spreading quickly, the elderly and people with disabilities are left behind, still struggling to use even basic digital services. According to a recent survey by the National Information Society Agency on the digital gap, only 51% of the general population had experience using AI, whereas that number dropped to around 30% for vulnerable groups such as the elderly, disabled, and low-income individuals. The more AI technology advances, these marginalized populations are being left further behind, widening that gap.
Digital devices are a challenge, so I don't really use them. I don't even use a card. It just seems a bit difficult.
In December of last year, the National Assembly passed the Digital Inclusion Act, which guarantees universal access to digital technologies. This means that both national and local governments are now required to develop policies ensuring that everyone in society can benefit from digital technology without discrimination. However, this currently remains largely symbolic, and more concrete practical policies and support measures are needed.
In order for everyone to equally enjoy the benefits of a digital society, we need to promote the current policies more widely so that all citizens are aware of them.
As the Lee Jae-myung administration aims to make South Korea one of the world's top 3 AI powers, it must not only focus on technological competitiveness, but will need to implement policies and institutional support so that digitally vulnerable populations are not left behind. 이은진, Arirang News.
On the entertainment front, director Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice has won the International People's Choice Award at this year's Toronto International Film Festival. Now, this is a new award that is determined by the vote of the viewing public. Separately, the highly coveted People's Choice Award went to director Chloe Zhao's adaptation of Hamlet titled Hamnet. Meanwhile, Park's latest big screen production, No Other Choice, will hit theaters here in South Korea next week.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived in Israel on Sunday and met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss the war in Gaza and last week's Israeli airstrike in Qatar. Upon arrival on Sunday morning, Rubio and Netanyahu visited the Western Wall in Jerusalem's Old City, accompanied by the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. The two said through a joint prayer ceremony that their alliance remains as strong and durable as the stones of the Western Wall. Though Rubio criticized the recent Israeli strike in Qatar, saying the United States was not happy, he emphasized that it will not change the nature of the U.S.-Israel relationship. Plans for Gaza and securing the return of hostages are to be discussed. Rubio will then join President Trump on his planned visit to Britain next week. Romania has condemned a Russian drone incursion, described as the second violation of NATO airspace within a week. The Romanian Defense Ministry confirmed on Saturday that its air defenses had tracked a Russian-made drone for almost an hour as it entered its airspace in the southeastern county of Tulcha. Detected near the Ukrainian border, the drone flew low and stayed in Romanian airspace for about 15 minutes before exiting near the village of Chilia-Veche, dropping off radar about 20 kilometers southwest of that point. Romania scrambled fighter jets and enlisted the support of Eurofighter jets from its NATO allies. However, the drone was not shot down as it was not considered an immediate threat. The incident comes days after Poland shot down Russian drones that had violated its airspace, prompting NATO allies to pledge to strengthen defenses. Iran's Supreme National Security Council on Sunday approved the agreement between Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency to resume inspections of nuclear facilities. The Council reviewed and approved the agreement recently concluded between Iran's foreign minister and the IAEA Director General in Cairo, Egypt on September 9th. Following attacks on its nuclear facilities by Israel and the United States in June, Iran had restricted IAEA inspectors from visiting these sites. However, under the new deal, Iran is required to report on nuclear material at the affected sites and permit IAEA access to all nuclear installations. Iran said the agreement can be terminated if any hostile action occurs against Iran or its nuclear facilities. In the UK, former world boxing champion Ricky the Hitman Hatton has died at the age of 46. His body was discovered early on Sunday morning at his home in Greater Manchester. Police said his death is not being treated as suspicious. Hatton's boxing career spanned from 1997 to 2012, winning titles in both the light welterweight and welterweight divisions. He earned 45 wins in 48 professional fights. Following his retirement, Hatton struggled with mental health, alcoholism, and addiction. After his death, tributes poured in, with the World Boxing Association saying he was a true champion and a legend of the sport. Cha Ji-hoon, Arirang News.
It is cool in the morning and evening, but the heat continues in the middle of the day. Heat wave advisories were issued for the coastal areas of Jeju Island, Jeollanam-do and Gyeongsangnam-do provinces today. The daytime temperature in Seoul rose to 30 degrees Celsius and it was 33 degrees in Daegu. This late summer heat will ease off after it rains across the country on Wednesday. After showers across the country tomorrow, it will start raining in the central and western parts of the country late at night and will spread across the country on Wednesday. Tomorrow, Seoul, Daejeon, Gwangju, and Daegu will start off at 23 degrees. Daily highs will go up to 29 degrees in Chuncheon, 33 degrees in Daegu and Gyeongju. After the rain stops, the morning temperature in Seoul will drop to 19 degrees on Thursday, and the daytime temperature in Seoul will only reach 24 degrees on Friday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.